Life sure has a twisted sense of humor. Here I am, Anna, just a regular gal, who somehow ended up in the middle of a family drama that could give soap operas a run for their money. Let me set the scene for you. It's a sunny Tuesday afternoon, and I'm in the kitchen, trying to figure out if the pasta sauce needs more basil or if I'm just procrastinating to avoid going back to the living room where David, my husband, is having a chat with his sister, Sarah. David and I have been married for a bit now. He's a great guy, really, but his first marriage was a bust. No kids, just a lot of arguments, I guess. Then there's me, with my 10-year-old whirlwind, Alex, from a chapter of my life I don't talk much about. David's family, though, they're a whole other story. Especially Sarah. She's like one of those characters from a TV show that you love to hate. Always smiling and sweet-talking when David's around, but turns into a venom-spitting serpent the second his back is turned. I decided the sauce was fine and braced myself to face the music. Walking into the living room, I caught the tail end of what Sarah was saying. And honestly, David, it's so generous of you to take Alex in like your own. Not many men would do that, Sarah cooed, her voice dripping with something sickly sweet. David, bless his heart, didn't pick up on the sarcasm. Well, Sarah, Alex is a great kid. And Anna, she's been amazing. We're a family. I forced a smile, stepping into the room. Speaking of family, how about we all sit down for dinner? It's almost ready. Sarah turned her syrupy smile to me. Oh, Anna, that sounds lovely. I was just telling David how lucky he is to have you. Yeah, luckiest man alive, I muttered under my breath as I turned back to the kitchen. As the evening wore on, dinner went as expected. Sarah praised my cooking, made a couple of not-so-subtle digs at how I've managed to settle in with David, and even threw in a couple of backhanded compliments for good measure. It wasn't until we were clearing the table that Sarah decided to show her true colors. David had excused himself to take a work call, and Alex was upstairs, doing whatever 10-year-olds do these days. It was just Sarah and me, a moment she clearly had been waiting for. You know, Anna, it's funny, she started, leaning against the kitchen counter, a smirk playing on her lips. How you've managed to land a man like David. From a nobody to the lady of the house. Quite the upgrade, don't you think? I clenched my fists, trying to keep my cool. Sarah, I'm not sure what you're getting at. Oh, come on, Anna. We both know this is all just a big show for you. Playing the doting wife and mother. But we both know what this really is, don't we? A nice, comfortable setup. Her words stung, more than I wanted to admit. You know what, Sarah? I don't have time for this. If you've got something to say it to David. She laughed, a cold, harsh sound that filled the kitchen. Oh, I wouldn't want to burst your little bubble, Anna. Enjoy it while it lasts. But remember, I'm watching you. And sooner or later, everyone will see the truth. Who knew transitioning to a housewife would feel like stepping into a minefield, especially with Sarah lurking around every corner, eager to see me trip. David brought up the idea one evening, his tone hesitant, as if he was walking on eggshells. Anna, I've been thinking, he started, fiddling with his fork, not meeting my eyes. With the business taking off, I need more help. And I was wondering, maybe you could, step in? I looked up from my plate, surprised. You mean, leave my job? Work with you? Yeah. David finally looked up, his eyes hopeful. It's just, I trust you, Anna. And it could be good for us, for the family. What do you think? It wasn't an easy decision. I loved my job, the independence it gave me. But David was right. The family needed me, and deep down, I knew this was the right move. Okay. I sighed. Let's do it. For the family. It was another ordinary day, or so I thought, cleaning up after breakfast and planning my to-do list, when Sarah dropped by unannounced. Her visits were about as pleasant as a toothache, but today, she was on a whole other level. I can't believe you quit your job to play house, Sarah sneered the moment David was out of earshot. What's your angle, Anna? Gold digger much? I spun around, my blood boiling. Excuse me? I'm doing this for my family, Sarah, not that it's any of your business. Oh, please. She scoffed, rolling her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. You've got David wrapped around your finger. It's pathetic. Before I could unleash a comeback, David walked back in. What's going on here? He asked, eyeing us both. Your wife was just explaining how she's turned into the perfect little housewife, Sarah said, her voice dripping with venom. David's gaze flicked to me, confusion written all over his face, then back to Sarah. I don't like your tone, Sarah. What's your problem? Sarah huffed, puffing up like a blowfish. My problem? Your wife's a gold digger, David. She quits her job, and now she's living off you. Everyone sees it. That's when David lost it. His usual calm demeanor evaporated, and he turned to Sarah with a fire in his eyes I'd rarely seen. My office. Now, he barked, pointing towards the hallway. Sarah's mouth snapped shut, and she stomped off after David, shooting me a glare that could curdle milk. I was left standing in the kitchen, my heart racing, wondering what the heck was going to happen next. The shouting from David's office was muffled, but the intensity was crystal clear. Words like respect, family, and apology were thrown around, though who said what was anyone's guess. Then, all of a sudden, it went quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that screams, something big just went down. My heart was in my throat as I waited, dreading and anticipating in equal measure. Moments later, the office door flew open, and out stormed Sarah, her face the color of a ripe tomato, eyes blazing with fury. She didn't even glance my way as she barreled past me and out the front door, slamming it so hard the windows rattled. David appeared in the doorway, looking like he'd gone 10 rounds, with a heavyweight. He sighed deeply and met my gaze. I'm sorry you had to hear that, Anna. But I've had enough of her disrespect towards you, towards us. I walked over to him, my earlier anger melting away. Are you okay? He wrapped me in a tight hug. I will be. We will be. I had to make it clear to her that she can't treat you, or any of us, like that. After that showdown, Sarah became a ghost in our lives. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, with no sign of her. It was like she'd vanished off the face of the earth, at least as far as our family was concerned. Adjusting to life as a housewife wasn't a walk in the park, but I managed to get the hang of it pretty quickly. Our house, once just a place to crash after a long day's work, turned into a well-oiled machine under my care. I also dipped my toes into David's world of financial investments. Turns out, I had a knack for it, probably more than I had initially thought. Between balancing the books and running the household, life was full, busy, and in a strange way, satisfying. David and I even started talking about taking a belated honeymoon. With all the hustle of his work, we never really got the chance to do something just for us after we got married. We should go somewhere, just the two of us. Anywhere you want, he'd say, wrapping his arms around me after dinner, a soft smile playing on his lips. Yeah? I'd respond, leaning back into his embrace. And leave all this? I'd gesture around to our home, the life we'd built. Who's gonna keep you from burning the house down trying to make toast? He'd chuckle, a deep, warm sound. Guess we'll have to take the risk. I'll learn to make toast if it means getting you alone for a week. It wasn't just us, though. David was a rock star with Alex. He'd taken to teaching him baseball, showing him the ropes, the right way to swing, the techniques that'd make a difference. I'd watch them from the kitchen window, tossing the ball back and forth, laughing and cheering. It was everything I'd hoped for when I dreamed of having a family. Then, just as we started to really settle into this idyll, life threw us a curveball. David, with all his vitality and plans for the future, was suddenly gone. Heart problems, they said. It was unexpected, a bolt from the blue that left us reeling. One day we're planning a honeymoon, and the next, I'm trying to figure out how to tell our son that his dad isn't coming home. The world didn't stop, though it felt like it should have. Life went on, painfully, inexorably. The big house felt emptier, The financial statement sat untouched on David's desk, and the baseball glove collected dust in the corner. In the silence that followed, I found myself talking to David as if he could hear me. "You left us too soon," I'd whisper, clutching his pillow close, trying to catch the scent of him that was already fading. "You promised me a honeymoon, you know. And toast, you promised toast." The day of David's funeral was a blur of sorrow and formalities. I was barely holding it together, grief gripping me so tight I found it hard to breathe. Through it all, Sarah was oddly detached, her mind clearly on matters other than mourning. She hadn't lifted a finger to help with any of the arrangements, leaving me to juggle everything on top of my own heartache. As the service commenced, the chapel was filled with those who knew David, distant relatives, colleagues, friends. They spoke highly of him, each anecdote and memory painting a picture of the man we all missed dearly. The respect and love they had for David was palpable, offering a sliver of comfort in the midst of pain. Then, as the eulogies wound down, Sarah made her move. It was like she couldn't stand the idea of not being the center of attention, even in grief. She pushed her way to the front, her eyes cold and calculating as she addressed the gathered crowd. "I need to make something clear," she began, her voice cutting through the solemn air. "Anna here, she's not one of us. She's always been about the money, playing the doting wife, but we all know the truth." Murmurs rippled through the room as Sarah's accusations flew. "She's nothing but a gold digger. Never loved my brother, only loved what he could give her. And let me tell you, she made my life hell, kept me away from my own brother, all to secure her spot as the sole heir." The audacity of her lies stole my breath. I stood there, frozen, as she painted me as the villain in her twisted narrative. "And I'll fight for what's rightfully mine," she declared with a venomous glare. "David's inheritance belongs to his real family, not some outsider and her unknown child." The room erupted into chaos, sides being taken, whispers growing louder. Yet, amidst the turmoil, a surprising number of faces turned to me with looks of sympathy and support. They knew David, and they knew us. They knew the truth. I was shell-shocked, the pain of Sarah's betrayal slicing through the fog of grief. It was one thing to deal with her underhanded comments and disdain in private, but to stand there, on the day we were supposed to say our final goodbyes to David, and listen to her spew such venom was unbearable. In that moment, I realized the depth of her malice. It wasn't just about not liking me or disapproving of our marriage. Sarah was willing to tear down everything David and I had built together, all for the sake of money and spite. The aftermath of David's funeral was a raw, gaping wound, made worse by Sarah's venom. I had tried to maintain a facade of strength for Alex's sake, but Sarah's relentless pursuit of what she deemed her rightful inheritance was a constant test of my resilience. Days trickled by, each one a challenge in keeping my composure and shielding Alex from the worst of it. Then, one afternoon, as Alex and I were sifting through a box of David's belongings, a mix of tears and laughter gracing our memories, Sarah stormed into our home like a tempest, her eyes wild with fury. "Explain this to me, Anna," she demanded, slamming a copy of the will onto the kitchen table where we sat. "Why does everything go to your son, while I, David's blood, get scraps?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself against the onslaught. "David made his wishes clear, Sarah. He wanted to make sure Alex and I were taken care of." "Bullshit," she spat, her face contorted in anger. "That kid isn't even his, not legally. David never adopted him. I'll drag this through every court until I get what's mine." Alex, eyes wide with confusion and fear, looked from Sarah to me, seeking reassurance. I squeezed his shoulder, a silent promise of protection. "Sarah," I began, my voice calm despite the storm raging inside me. "You're wrong. David didn't need to adopt Alex, because Alex is his biological son." Her tirade halted abruptly, words caught in her throat. "What?" The single word was a choked whisper, disbelief etching her features. "Yes," I continued, feeling a surge of defiant strength. "David is Alex's father. We never told anyone because we wanted to protect Alex from exactly this kind of ugliness." "Lies." Sarah's voice cracked, but the certainty behind her accusation wavered. You're lying. Prove it. Without a word, I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. I retrieved the folder containing the birth certificate with David's name, proudly listed as the father. I tossed them onto the table in front of her. Sarah's hands trembled as she picked up the documents, her eyes darting between the lines of irrefutable evidence. A myriad of emotions played across her face, shock, denial, and finally, a dawning realization of the truth. This can't be, she murmured, the fight draining from her as the reality of her brother's life, a life she thought she knew, crumbled around her. It is, I said, firm but not unkind. David loved Alex. He loved us. And his last wish was to see us taken care of. Can't you respect that? Sarah looked up, her eyes meeting mine for the first time without malice. There was a vulnerability there I hadn't seen before. I need to think. Without another word, she stood, the documents clutched in her hand, and walked out, leaving a heavy silence in her wake. Alex, still clinging to my side, looked up at me with wide, questioning eyes. Is she going to come back? He asked, his voice small. I don't know, sweetheart, I replied, pulling him into a hug. But no matter what, we're going to be okay. We have each other, and that's what matters most. In the weeks following the confrontation, Sarah's determination to undermine my son's rightful inheritance only intensified. Her actions culminated in a legal battle that threatened to tear apart what little peace we had managed to find in our grief. She was adamant, claiming that I had somehow deceived David into believing Alex was his biological son, thus securing our financial future at her expense. Her allegations, steeped in bitterness, prompted a legal requirement for incontrovertible proof of paternity. The decision to proceed with a DNA test was not taken lightly. It felt like a violation, a final indignity that David's memory did not deserve. Yet, it was a necessary step to protect Alex's future and affirm his rightful place as David's son. The process was clinical, impersonal, but underpinning it all was a simmering tension, a silent battle between truth and resentment. On the day the results were due, Sarah and I found ourselves seated across from each other in the sterile environment of the lawyer's office, a gulf of unspoken recriminations between us. You're sure you want to do this? I asked, breaking the silence. My voice was steady, but inside, a storm of emotions raged. Sarah's response was a terse nod, her lips a thin line. Let's just get this over with, she said, her voice laced with a defiance that belied her nervousness. The lawyer, a neutral party in this familial discord, opened the envelope with a solemnity that matched the gravity of the situation. He scanned the document, then looked up, meeting my gaze first, then Sarah's. The results are conclusive, he began, his tone measured. The DNA analysis confirms with a high degree of certainty that Alex is indeed David's biological son. This makes him the rightful heir to David's estate, in accordance with the will. The words hung in the air, a definitive end to Sarah's campaign of doubt. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, a vindication for David, for Alex, and for the truth we had always known. Sarah, for her part, sat frozen, the color draining from her face as the implications of the results sank in. The fight, the anger, the relentless pursuit of what she believed was hers by right, all of it crumbled in the face of undeniable truth. I didn't. She stammered, her facade of certainty shattering. You see, Sarah, Alex was always David's priority. He loved him as his own, because he was his own. This battle, this pain you put us through, it was never necessary. Sarah looked away, her eyes brimming with tears that refused to fall. The lawyer, sensing the emotional turmoil, tactfully suggested we might need a moment. As the office door clicked shut behind him, leaving us in an uneasy truce, I reached across the chasm of our shared grief. Sarah, it's time to put this behind us. For David's sake, for Alex's. We can't change the past, but we can decide where we go from here. But she refused to put up with it. You're going to regret this, she screamed and ran out of the office, slamming the door loudly at the last. Time marched on, relentless and indifferent to the void David's passing left in our lives. Alex and we did our best to keep his memory alive, to honor him in our daily routines. Then, through the grapevine, snippets of Sarah's current predicament began to reach me. The whispers painted a grim picture. Sarah, it seemed, had found herself in a financial quagmire. She'd always had a taste for the finer things, a lifestyle that her means couldn't quite support. David's death and the subsequent inheritance saga seemed to have pushed her over the edge into a reckless spree of loans and lavish spending. She really thought she'd get everything, huh? My neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, mentioned offhand one afternoon as we chatted over the fence. Now, I hear she's dodging calls left and right, creditors breathing down her neck. I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. Yeah, seems like it. Hard to believe she thought luxury bags were worth all this mess. Mrs. Thompson clicked her tongue in disapproval. Pride and greed, dear. They make people do foolish things. Shame, really. Your David, God rest his soul, was never one for such nonsense. The news of Sarah's financial woes stirred a complicated mix of emotions in me. There was no pleasure in her misfortune, no sense of vindication. If anything, it was a tragic reminder of how deeply fractured our family had become in the wake of David's death. Months had rolled by since the whole inheritance drama settled down. Just when I thought peace had finally found its way back to us, my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in a while. It was Sarah. Hearing from her after everything that went down was the last thing I expected. Curiosity, more than anything, made me answer. Anna, listen, I need your help. Sarah's voice came through, tinged with desperation I hadn't heard from her before. I couldn't help but let out a dry laugh. Help? Now that's rich, coming from you. Weren't you the one who said I wasn't family? What changed? She hesitated, then plowed ahead with her request. That was before. This is now. I'm in deep, Anna. I need to pay off these debts. We're family, aren't we? The audacity of her request floored me. Family? You've got a short memory, Sarah. When it suited you, I was nothing. And now, in your hour of need, we're suddenly relatives? It's not like that. She tried to interrupt, but I wasn't having any of it. No, it's exactly like that. You haven't changed a bit, Sarah. Still as self-centered as ever. You didn't think twice before dragging me and Alex through mud, and now you want help? There was a pause, a silence that spoke volumes. I could almost hear her scrambling for a comeback, any semblance of an argument that could sway me. I just thought. You thought wrong. I cut her off, my voice firm. You made your bed, Sarah. Now, you gotta lie in it. I've got my own family to look after, and frankly, you're not part of it. Not after everything. The line went quiet, and for a moment, I wondered if she had anything left to say. When she finally spoke, her voice was small, resigned. I see. I'm sorry, Anna. For everything. Sorry doesn't cut it, Sarah. Actions speak louder than words, and you're screened. You'll figure your way out of this mess. Goodbye. Hanging up, I let out a long breath I didn't realize I was holding. It felt like closing the final chapter of a book filled with too much turmoil. Looking over at Alex, who was doing his homework at the kitchen table, I was reminded of what truly mattered. Who was that, Mom? Alex asked, his pencil pausing mid-sentence. Just someone from the past, honey. It's nothing to worry about, I assured him, offering a smile. He nodded, turning his attention back to his homework, and I watched him for a moment. This was my world now, my priority. The drama, the fights, the endless cycle of resentment with Sarah, it was all behind us.